Welcome to our presentation on a new path scaling vision and language navigation with synthetic instructions and imitation learning. This is joint work with Peter Anderson, Su Wang, Jingyu Ko, Alex Ku, Austin Waters, Yinfei Yang, Jason Baldridge, and Zorana Parekh at Google Research. The contributions of our work are an automated instruction trajectory augmentation pipeline used to generate navigation graphs for Gibson environments, a new synthetic dataset of 4.2 million multilingual navigation instructions, a solely imitation learning agent trained without interaction with the environment, and new results demonstrating substantial gains in the state of the art on the challenging RxR dataset. Key takeaways are aspects of language understanding that are important for instruction following agents appear hard to learn from static web data. A recipe that does work well is large-scale imitation learning with generic architectures and better and more diverse synthetic instructions. It opens up the door for co-training with other image-text understanding tasks. What is vision and language navigation? The agent is instantiated in an environment and must follow a natural language instruction W to reach its goal. Developing robots that follow human instructions is a long-term formidable challenge. Vision and language navigation is an ideal testbed for studying instruction following. It requires grounding of language in visual perceptions and actions. Navigation can be simulated photorealistically at scale, and evaluation is straightforward. We simply need to check whether the agent has reached its goal. Prior state-of-the-art VLN agents have two major shortcomings. The first is that they require interacting with the environment during training. Training with online RL implies that after prediction at each time step, we would need to query the environment to know the agent's new position. This requires complex training setups commonly implemented using an actor-critic framework. Of course, this also means that it's difficult to scale up the amount of training data. Secondly, all previous VLN agents have focused on training on a small set of environments based on Matterport 3D. This results in low diversity of objects and scenes and leads to poor generalization to unseen environments. Given the success of image-text pre-training for general vision and language tasks such as captioning and question answering, the natural question to ask here is whether scaling up pre-training using web-scale image data can also solve the problem here. But we see that images from CC and other image-text datasets are typically well-lit, well-composed, and aesthetically pleasing, whereas for Matterport 3D images, the framing depends on the position of the agent. We also find that generic image text data doesn't usually have allocentric and egocentric spatial expressions like near a gray console table behind you, imperatives and negations like do not enter the room in front, temporal conditions like walk until you see an entrance on your left, and finally, text-only datasets might contain such language, but it is meaningless without sensory-motor context. So the answer to this question is no, not if you do it with generic image text data. The speaker-follower model introduced by Fried et al. In 2018 suggests to train an in-domain instruction generation model on the R2R dataset. At test time, the follower improves its chances of success by looking ahead at possible future routes and pragmatically choosing the best route by scoring them according to the probability the speaker would generate the correct instruction for each route. Existing generators, however, suffer from poor visual grounding, causing them to rely on language priors and hallucinate objects. Human annotators look at less than 30% of the environment, and the instructions reference only a fraction of even those objects that they look at. This makes learning a precise mapping between visual inputs and text outputs much harder. As a consequence, human wayfinding success rates on R2R are 36% for speaker-follower generated instructions. Further exacerbating the problem is that the Matterport 3D environments are limited in size, and RL-based training makes it unclear how to efficiently use more data, even if it was available. Marquee is a much stronger speaker model that appeared at CVPR last year, and it uses a two-stage generation approach. Please refer to the paper for details. We expand the set of training environments by also including the Gibson environments having 572 buildings. We create navigation graphs to indicate navigable paths between the panoramas. Using Marquee, we annotate an additional 3.2 million instructions in English, Hindi, and Telugu, bringing the total number of instructions in our new dataset to 4.2 million. We attempt to answer the following three questions through this work. The first is to address the issue with the quality of instructions. We ask the question, do better instructions in terms of being more grounded and easier to follow imply a better follower? The second question addresses the bottleneck in scaling up training. Can we get rid of RL and use only imitation learning to train efficiently at scale? Finally, we ask whether including more diverse environments can help us obtain better follower performance. This is our agent. It consists of an MT5 encoder, which is multilingual T5 encoder. For high throughput, we train only with imitation learning, which is behavioral cloning and Dagger. Pre-training is performed on all available data, and fine-tuning is on human annotated data only after dropping the MLM objective. So what works? We find that on RxR val unseen, pre-training with synthetic instructions provides a large gain over pre-training with just the human annotated RxR and R2R datasets. Interestingly, as you can see, by adding the speaker Matterport, we get not that much of a gain, but adding Marquee Matterport, which is generated by our improved Marquee instruction generator, gives a much bigger boost, and the score is 60.3 compared to 40.1 without any synthetic instructions. If we add Marquee Gibson, which is adding more diverse and new environments, we get an additional boost of 4 points and get 64.4. We also find that not including the speaker Matterport instructions improves performance over having it. Finally, switching from MT5 base to MT5 large and fine-tuning is also beneficial. Surprisingly, Marvel makes less mistakes, which is it produces more perfect trajectories, as seen on the graph on the left, than human wayfinders. But human success rates at reaching the goal is much higher. You can see this by the improved NDTW score of humans, which is 79.1 compared to 66.8 by Marvel. Error recovery seems to be the difference and is a possible focus for future improvement. Humans make mistakes along the way, but almost always recover to reach the goal. The main weakness of behavioral cloning is that the state distribution seen in training differs from the state distribution induced by the agent during inference. In Dagger, during each iteration of fine-tuning, the dataset is augmented with trajectories of states visited by the current agent policy and actions given by an expert. Figure 3 explains the calculation of the expert actions. We find that most of the gains are captured in a single Dagger iteration. Our final results show that we obtain 67 NDTW after pre-training, with fine-tuning on the human annotated data, we have an additional boost of 70.6. And then finally, with one iteration of Dagger, we have 70.8. In the pre-explore setting, we allow the model to have access to synthetic instructions generated by Marquee on the unseen environments. This is a more realistic setting where the robot may be able to explore an environment before being deployed in it, but without having access to any human annotations. We find that we can get a further boost of 2 points. Finally, the contributions in a nutshell are an automated instruction trajectory augmentation pipeline used to generate navigation graphs for Gibson environments, a new synthetic dataset of 4.2 million multilingual navigation instructions, solely imitation learning agent trained without interaction with the environment, and new results demonstrating substantial gains in the state-of-the-art on the challenging RxR dataset. We've released the instructions and paths at this link below. The key takeaways are aspects of language understanding that are important for instruction following agents appear to be hard to learn from static web data, for example, actions and verbs, imperatives and negations, and temporal conditions. A recipe that does work well, though, is large-scale imitation learning with generic architectures, better and more diverse synthetic instructions. However, we do find that aligning synthetic instructions to the target domain is essential. We believe that this opens up the doors to co-training with other image text understanding tasks. Thank you.